Mara had lived next to Gerald for 9 years before she thought to ask his last name. That should have bothered her sooner. It didn't. He was the kind of neighbor you built a life around without noticing. The man who brought her mail in during storms, who fed her cat the summer she was in the hospital, who waved from his porch every morning at 7:15 like a piece of clockwork nobody had to wind. 9 years, 2 apartments, 1 thin shared wall. She only started asking questions because of the mailbox. The property manager was replacing the panel out front, new locks, new nameplates, and asked all the tenants to confirm the spelling of their names for the labels. Mara gave hers without thinking. Then the manager frowned at his clipboard and said, "Unit 4B is just blank. We don't have a name on file for that one. Is someone even living there?" Mara laughed. "Gerald's lived there longer than I have." The manager checked again, flipped a page, shook his head. "There's no Gerald anywhere in this building's records. Not on the original lease, not on any renewal, not on a single work order in 9 years. She thought it was a clerical mistake. Old buildings lost paperwork all the time. So that night, half as a joke, she decided to prove the manager wrong. She'd pull up the utility account for 4B on the shared building app, screenshot Gerald's name, and hand it over in the morning. The account existed. The bills were paid on time, every month, without fail. The name on the account wasn't Gerald's. It wasn't anyone's. Where a name should have been, there was only a string of numbers, an account ID, nothing more, like whoever set it up had never needed to be called by a name at all. Mara sat with her phone in the dark for a long time. Then she did the only thing that made sense to a person who still believed there was a boring explanation for all of this. She looked up. Through her window, across the narrow gap between buildings, Gerald's porch light was on, and for the first time in 9 years, she realized she had never once seen him hold a piece of mail with his own name on it. Mara told herself she'd ask him directly, simple as that. Knock on his door, laugh it off, say something like, "Hey, funny thing, the building thinks you're a ghost." She didn't expect the knocking to go unanswered. She didn't expect it to go unanswered for 4 days. His porch light stayed on every night, same as always. His blinds shifted. Once, on the second day, she caught the movement from her kitchen window and told herself it was the cat. Except Gerald didn't have a cat. He never had. On the 5th day, she tried something different. She went to the small corner store 2 blocks down, the one Gerald mentioned once, years ago, in passing, said he stopped in most mornings for coffee before work. She'd never actually seen him there. She'd just believed him, the way you believe small, forgettable details from people you trust. The man behind the counter squinted at her when she described him. Mid-50s, quiet, always in a gray jacket, been in the building 9 years. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I've worked this counter 12 years. Nobody like that's ever been a regular here." She almost let it go there. She wanted to. Instead, she went home and did something she'd never once thought to do in 9 years of friendly waves and borrowed sugar and small kindnesses. She pulled every photo she owned that might have him in it, birthday parties, hallway selfies, one blurry shot from a building potluck 3 years back where he stood at the edge of the frame, half cut off, holding a paper plate. In every single one, he was turned away from the camera, or blocked by someone else's shoulder, or just barely out of focus in a way that felt, now, less like bad luck and more like habit. 9 years, dozens of photos, not one clear shot of his face. Mara sat on her kitchen floor with her phone in her lap, scrolling through image after image of a man she had trusted completely, realizing she couldn't actually describe him to a police sketch artist if her life depended on it. That night, at exactly 7:15, she heard his door open across the hall, the same time he always left for work. She looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but his door was standing wide open. Mara stood at her own door for almost a full minute before she made herself move. The hallway was empty, just like the peephole showed. Gerald's door, 4B, hung open about a foot, that soft yellow porch-like glow spilling out into the hall like it had every night for 9 years. No footsteps, no sound of him getting ready for work. Just the door, open, waiting. She told herself this was the moment to call someone. The manager, the police, even. Anyone whose job it was to deal with things like this. Instead, she crossed the hall in her socks and knocked on the frame of his own open door, feeling stupid and terrified in equal measure. "Gerald, it's Mara." Nothing answered her. Not silence, exactly. She could hear a radio playing somewhere inside. Low, some station she didn't recognize. The kind of static edge talk radio that plays at 3 a.m. when no one's really listening. She pushed the door open another few inches. The apartment looked exactly like she remembered from the handful of times she'd stepped inside over the years. Same worn armchair, same stack of paperbacks, same chipped mug on the side table. It was, in every visible way, a lived-in home, except she noticed, now really noticing for the first time, that there wasn't a single photograph anywhere. Not one. No frames on the walls, no picture on the fridge, no face looking back at her from anywhere in the room. 9 years of visits, and she never once clocked that. On the kitchen counter sat a stack of mail, rubber-banded together, thick with what looked like months of unopened envelopes. She knew she shouldn't. She picked up the top one anyway. The return address was a name she didn't recognize, some agency she'd never heard of, an acronym she couldn't place. The envelope was addressed not to Gerald. It was addressed to occupant, Unit 4B, review overdue. Behind her, the radio cut to static, and a voice she knew, calm, familiar, the exact voice that had wished her good morning 1,000 times, said quietly, from somewhere deeper in the apartment she could not see. "You really shouldn't be in here, Mara." Mara didn't move. Couldn't. The voice had come from the hallway that led toward the bedroom, a hallway she'd never once walked down in 9 years of visits. Because Gerald always kept her in the living room, always had a reason. A cup of coffee already poured, a chair already pulled out for her. She realized, standing there, that she had never seen that hallway before at all. "Gerald," her own voice came out smaller than she wanted. "I'd ask you to leave," he said, still unseen, still calm, "but I think we're past that now, aren't we?" She should have run. Every instinct told her to run. But her feet stayed planted on his kitchen tile, and her hands stayed closed around that unopened envelope, and some deep, stubborn part of her needed the answer more than she needed to be safe. "Who are you?" she asked. A long pause, then, softer than she expected, almost tired. "I've been asking myself that for longer than you'd believe." He stepped into view then, finally, for the first time in 9 years, standing fully in the light instead of turned away or half in shadow. His face was exactly as unremarkable as she remembered. Kind eyes, a tired mouth. Nothing about him looked wrong. That was the problem. Nothing about him looked like anything at all. The kind of face you'd forget the second you turned away from it. A face built, somehow, to not be remembered. "The building doesn't have a record of me," he said, "because I make sure it never does. I pay the bills through an account with no name on it. I don't get photographed. I don't get remembered clearly, even by people who've known me for years. You noticed that too, didn't you? The blurry photos, the half-turned face." Mara's mouth had gone dry. "That's not possible. That's not a thing a person can just do." He almost smiled. "No, it isn't something a person does." He glanced, just briefly, toward the unopened stack of mail still rubber-banded on the counter, toward the envelope in her hand marked review overdue. "It's something a person is assigned to do," he said. "And I think, now that you've seen this much, they're going to want to talk to you too." Mara's grip tightened on the envelope. "Who's they?" Gerald, if that was even a name that meant anything, looked at her for a long moment, like he was deciding how much of this could still be walked back. "Sit down," he said. "Please. You're not in danger from me. That much I can promise you." She didn't sit, but she didn't leave either. 9 years ago," he said, "I moved in across the hall from a woman who was, at the time, in the middle of a custody case she was about to lose. A man was going to hurt her son, and no court order was going to stop him in time. Someone needed to be nearby, watching, ready, someone who could disappear afterward without a trace connecting back to her." Mara's stomach turned cold. "That was me. That was my building. That was..." "Not you," Gerald said gently. "The woman before you. You moved into her apartment 2 years after she left. You never knew her name because there's no record she was ever there either. So what are you?" Mara's voice cracked on the question. "Some kind of witness protection, a private investigator, what?" "Closer to a placeholder," he said. "An arrangement. When a situation needs a quiet, permanent presence, someone reliable enough that people build their whole sense of safety around them, and forgettable enough that nobody ever asks the wrong questions, that role gets filled. Filled by someone like me. And the paperwork, deliberately, never exists. Because the paperwork is the only thing that could ever be used to find the person we're protecting." Mara thought of every wave from the porch, every borrowed cup of sugar. Every time she'd felt inexplicably, deeply safe in a building most people found unsettling at night. Am I the one being protected? She whispered. Is that what this is? Gerald's expression didn't answer the question. It did something worse. It flickered, just slightly, with something that looked almost like pity. No, Mara, he said quietly. You're not the one I was placed here for. He nodded toward the stack of unopened mail still in her hand. But you just picked up an envelope with your building's address on it, sent by people who track every unit I've ever been assigned to. And now that you've opened one, somewhere down the hall, a phone that didn't belong to Gerald began, very softly, to ring. Gerald didn't move toward the ringing. He watched Mara instead, like the phone wasn't the important thing in the room. Don't answer that, he said. Not yet. Not until you understand what answering it means. The ringing continued, patient, unbothered, coming from a room she still hadn't seen. You have maybe 90 seconds before it stops, he said. So I'll say this fast, that phone doesn't ring for me. It's never rung in 9 years. It rings for whoever opens the mail. Mara looked down at the envelope crushed in her fist. Review overdue. She hadn't even opened it yet, just held it. I haven't opened it, she said. You will, Gerald said, not unkindly. Everyone does. Curiosity isn't optional. It's the one thing they can always count on. The ringing stopped. The silence after it was worse. Who is they? Gerald. A real answer, not another riddle. He exhaled, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely afraid. A group that places people like me into ordinary lives to protect people who can't be protected any other way. No badges, no court records, no oversight anyone can find. Which means when something goes wrong, when a placement is discovered, there's no official process to fix it. There's only cleanup. Cleanup, Mara repeated. They don't hurt people, if that's what you're picturing, he said quickly. It's simpler than that, and somehow worse. They relocate you, overnight. Your apartment, your job records, your name on file everywhere. It all quietly stops matching who you were yesterday. And whoever you were before becomes exactly as hard to trace as I am right now. Mara felt the room tilt slightly. You're saying I could just disappear, off paper, like you. I'm saying it's already started, Gerald said, and nodded toward her hand. She looked down. The envelope she was holding, sealed, unopened 30 seconds ago, now had her own name printed across the front where Gerald's blank return address had been. Mara's sister's voice was still in her ear, asking what was wrong, asking why she'd gone quiet, and Mara realized she hadn't said a single word yet. She hadn't given an address. She hadn't given a name. The unfamiliar voice from the hallway hadn't raised in volume, hadn't rushed. It simply existed now, in the apartment, the way weather exists. Gerald's whole posture changed. The tired, almost kind man from a moment ago straightened, and something in his face closed like a door. Go, he said to Mara, low and fast. Now, back to your apartment. Lock it. Stay on the phone. Gerald, that was never a request. His voice had an edge to it she'd never heard in 9 years. Go. She went. She didn't remember crossing the hallway, only that she was suddenly on the other side of her own door, deadbolt thrown back pressed to the wood, her sister's voice still asking, again and again, Mara, what is going on? Talk to me. So she did. Fast, breathless, half of it not making sense even to her, the missing name, the blank utility account, the envelope that had rewritten itself in her hands, the voice down Gerald's hallway that knew her name before she'd said it out loud. Her sister, to her credit, didn't hang up and didn't laugh. She just said, very steadily, okay, I'm calling you back from a different phone in 5 minutes. If you don't answer, I'm calling the police and giving them your address. Do you understand me? Yes. Do not open that envelope. Mara looked down. She was still holding it. Her own name, printed clean and certain, staring back at her. I won't, she said. 5 minutes felt like an hour. She sat on her kitchen floor, phone clutched to her chest, listening for any sound through the wall that separated her life from whatever was happening in 4B. There was nothing. No voices, no footsteps, no radio static. Then her phone rang, her sister, right on time, exactly 5 minutes later. Except when Mara looked at the screen before answering, the caller ID didn't say her sister's name. It said, occupant. Mara stared at the screen, occupant. The exact word that had been printed on the envelope 30 seconds before her own name replaced it. She almost didn't answer. Every instinct told her not to. But it was still her sister's number underneath that word. She could see the digits, familiar as her own heartbeat, so she answered, hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Mara, her sister's voice, but strange somehow, a half-second delay, like it was traveling further than a phone call should. I need you to listen to me carefully. Your name, it said occupant. Why would it? I don't have time to explain that part, her sister said. Something's happening on my end too. A man came to my door 2 minutes ago. He didn't say much. He just asked if I'd spoken to you tonight. Mara's blood went to ice. Don't tell them anything. Don't tell them where. I already did, her sister said, and her voice cracked on it. Mara, I'm sorry. He knew things already. He knew your address before I said it. He just wanted me to confirm it. The line crackled, that same static Mara had heard bleeding out of Gerald's radio. You need to leave your apartment right now, her sister said. Not tomorrow. Not after you pack a bag. Right now, out the door. Don't stop for anything. The call cut out mid-sentence. Not disconnected. Cut, cleanly, like a hand had reached through the phone and pinched the line shut. Mara stood in the sudden silence of her apartment. Envelope still crushed in one fist, phone gone dead in the other. Then, from the hallway outside her door, not Gerald's door, hers, she heard the same flat, unhurried voice from earlier. Mara, there's no version of tonight where you don't open that envelope. It's already yours. It has been since the moment you touched it. A pause, almost gentle. The only thing left to decide is whether you open it standing here, alone, on your own terms. A soft knock, once, against her door, or whether we come in and do it for you. Mara looked down at the envelope in her trembling hand, her own name printed across it in ink that hadn't existed an hour ago, and understood, with a clarity that felt almost like relief, that there had only ever been one real choice in this whole apartment. She tore it open. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead. No signature. Just a few lines, typed plainly, like a form filled out for someone else a long time ago. You have been selected for continuity. Effective tonight, your name will be removed from all records associated with this address. A new placement will be assigned. Your role, going forward, is to be present, reliable, and unremembered, for as long as someone nearby needs you to be. You will not recall being asked whether you wanted this. Welcome, occupant. Mara read it 3 times before the knock came again, softer this time, almost patient, like it already knew there was no version of tonight where she didn't open the door to. She opened it. The hallway was empty. Gerald's door across the hall stood closed now, dark, no porch light glowing beneath it for the first time in 9 years. There was no man standing in her hallway. There never had been, not really, just a voice that came from wherever voices like that come from, and a piece of paper that had already done the only thing it needed to do. She never got a call back from her sister that night. When she tried the number the next morning, it rang through to a voicemail box that had never been set up. 3 days later, a new tenant moved into 4B, young, quiet, kept to himself. He waved at Mara from the porch the first morning, at exactly 7:15, like it was already a habit older than the day itself. Mara waved back. She couldn't, if you asked her, tell you what her own sister's voice used to sound like before that phone call. She couldn't find a single clear photo of herself from before that night. Every one she checked was blurred, turned away, half out of frame. She still lives in the building. She still brings in the neighbor's mail during storms. She still feeds a cat that isn't hers when someone's in the hospital. If you ask her how long she's lived there, she smile and say a long time now, because somewhere underneath the smile, she already understands that the real answer isn't a number anyone's allowed to check. If you ever find a neighbor who's a little too reliable, a little too easy to trust, and impossible to picture clearly once they're out of the room, don't go looking for their name in the records. Some people were never meant to be found on paper.